Drones over America. Who do they belong to? We're going to try to shed some light on that for everybody today. As you see, I am a solo here, and officially welcome one and all, wherever and whenever you may be. This is Universal Disclosure, meeting the moment. My name is Mike, an active UFO/UAP Field Investigator in Southern California, and I'm missing my co-host, Reverend Stu, from Melbourne, Australia today. We had some technical issues when we were trying to get this conversation going, and with the holiday schedules and everything, we only had a small window to do this, so he had to kind of bow out of this particular episode, but I'm sure he will be checking it out, and we're just going to kind of get right down into it. In a couple of seconds, I'm going to bring in a couple of friends of mine who also are UAP Field Investigators in Southern California. So you're going to get 3 UAP Field Investigators opinions, actually 4, because let me read a quick statement here from my friend, mentor, and boss, as it were, in the UFO world, Mr. Earl Grey Anderson, who is the State Director for Southern California MUFON International. And this is, of course, the other folks that I'm going to bring in real soon are also on that same team. As I always say, this is an independent production of that, and we are here just talking about our own personal opinions. But in relation to the drones, Earl Anderson says, those drones have absolutely nothing to do with or in common with the UFO phenomenon. It has human origin written all over it. And every drone, no matter how high-tech, has a controller's radio signal, and it's child's play tracking the operator down. So, the military knows exactly who is doing this, which leaves us with 3 hypotheticals here. It's the military themselves. They eventually blame all UFO sightings and incursions on drones, so easy way to already dilute and make the skeptical public, there's nothing to all this, it's just drones. Number 2, it's one of the military industrial contractors creating an excuse to bolster military black budgeting spending. See how vulnerable and sensitive we are? Yeah. And we just happen to have the technology to fix it, but we'll need a large government grant to do so. Wouldn't that be convenient? And number 3, it's a foreign power that's messing with us. China, Russia, Iran, maybe even North Korea. Not sure if North Korea has the budget for such an op, but they are working with Putin right now, so it could be a joint effort. The drones do seem to be moving in a way that looks like geographical mapping. So that is Earl Grey Anderson's statement. He was going to try to be here with us as well, but he had another podcast to do in our short little time window that we could do this. So I want to get right down to it. Before I bring in Ann and Robert, I'm going to put up an animated map of where this all began, just to sort of drive home the point of what's in this area, because as investigators, that's what we look for, common threads and motifs and such. And it's going to be pretty clear that it's the military installations these drones are being seen over primarily. So this is a really quick animated map that I made off of Google. By no means is it super comprehensive, as it were. It's just the information available on Google, but it pretty much makes the point. So these are the counties that everybody has started reporting seeing the drones. Starting in Philadelphia, there's 4 Navy stations in that vicinity. And moving on to Monmouth County, NCIS is there, 2 Army National Guard, and Fort Monmouth. Hunterdon, New Jersey, there's the Army National Guard. Somerset, New Jersey, National Guard Armory. And then Warren, New Jersey, I didn't find any active bases in that general vicinity, nor did I find any in Sussex, New Jersey, but that could be slight spillover. Morris, New Jersey, has the U.S. Army, the Marine Corps, the Picatinny Arsenal, the National Guard Armory, the Civil Air Patrol. Moving on to Bergen, New Jersey, Defense Contract Audit Agency, Veteran Services, Brooklyn, New York, Military and Naval Affairs Division, miscellaneous reserve installations, and Staten Island has a couple of military installations there as well. So now with that, I want to introduce Robert and Ann. Both are on the Southern California investigative team for MUFON. We all work together, and this is just some of our team. There's a total of 12. But again, we're all here on our own independently talking about our personal ideas. We're not representing MUFON here. But nonetheless, here we go. So Ann and Robert, thank you for joining me here today. And if you can both just kind of give a brief outline of your background, and then what do you think about all these drones going on right now?
Oh, well, thanks, Mick, for having me here. My name's Ann. I was a scientist with the state of California for many years, as well as a criminal investigator. That's my background. I recently helped move on with investigations for cases that came in for UAPs. Um, you know, I've been thinking about these different drones, and I was doing some research online, and DJI is a Chinese drone company. They have 70% of the market for drones. And I was thinking they actually were in a lawsuit with Department of Defense because the Department of Defense was declaring them a Chinese military-owned company. And also, I had a thing here online about the NDAA 2025, which is a National Defense Authorization Act. That's when they declared that certain drones need to be banned. And I was wondering, since this is still going on between China and this company and Department of Defense, whether this has anything to do with it. Are they trying to make a point? Hey, we have these drones. Are they trying to make chaos for us? Because these are huge drones. These are not your regular drones that they're seeing in the sky. They're huge. I mean, I saw a picture of one of them, and they look like that one person could fit inside of it, like the drone that Ehang makes, the Chinese company. It's a battery-powered drone that can fit one person inside of it. And so I was wondering, could it be something to do with this?
Wow, that's pretty interesting. I had no idea about any of that, really. Um, okay. So, Robert, what do you have to chime in on that one? Were you aware of this Chinese company? And uh,
I'm not aware of that company, Mike. But just to begin with, thank you very much for inviting me to join you guys tonight. And I am a licensed drone operator. I hold a certificate called a Small Unmanned Aerial System certificate, and it gives me the ability to fly drones in a recreational manner. I do study commercial drones on a regular basis, though, and so I have flown different types of hobby drones, and as well as conventional types of fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters with radio control. So I'm very up to date on the FAA regulations, especially for my certificate, but I'm also fairly familiar with the Part 107, which regulates commercial drone activity. I also grew up flying with my father. He had private airplanes when I was younger, so I've spent a lot of time in the air with him. And I'm also an aviation photographer and videographer, and one of my primary interests is military aircraft. So getting to what I think about what's going on in New Jersey, for example, I think we're seeing several different types of drones up there. I think it could be a combination of hobby and commercial drones. The way that it's going on, it almost seems like whoever is doing it is testing the defense and the law enforcement to see what their reaction would be to an increase in drone activity and so forth. It's a very unique situation, though, because it's very centralized in one part of the country. There are military assets there in that area, as well as President-elect Trump's golf course. So it's very perplexing, even for those of us that are directly involved in the drone hobby and the drone activity as it relates to different commercial applications and the military.
So, Robert, I wanted to ask you about that too, because from my understanding, if I have a drone and I fly it towards, let's say, even just an airport, it's not going to go to the airport. It's going to hit like this invisible wall in the sky and get sent back home to me. Is that not the case? I mean, I know that's definitely the case for some military installations where a hobby drone is not allowed to fly there. It literally gets bounced back.
Well, many of the newer drones do come with the fencing technology, like you mentioned, where a barrier can be set up. And that can be set up by the operator so that their line of sight is always enabled. That's one of the rules, at least in the hobby drone flying, that you must have a line of sight on your drone. And that's why you might put up a barrier, like a rectangular barrier around your flying area, so that your drone will stop at that point, and then and you can also program it to come back to you at that point. Now, as far as the FAA or the military putting up like an electronic barrier, I'm not aware of that. But I do know that under Part 107 of the commercial drone regulations, that you can fly in close proximity to airports, maybe for like videography or things of that nature. But you must file a flight plan with the FAA and tell them where you will be flying and what the application is. And they must give you authorization before you can do that. If you got caught flying around an airport, especially a busy like international airport, and you had not filed that flight plan and been approved for the flight plan, then you would be subject to violation and probably a citation and perhaps arrest by the local law enforcement.
Yeah, if you fly over 400 feet, don't you need to file that flight plan or get permission?
Well, now for hobby drones, you cannot fly over 400 feet whatsoever. That is your maximum ceiling. You also cannot fly over people at low altitude where you may endanger them, perhaps at like a sporting venue or music concert, etc. Now, commercial operators can go ahead and file for that flight plan and get prior approval. One of our other members, Terry, was mentioning that we're probably not aware of it, but there are drones flying above like the NFL football games, for example. But those operators probably, to the best of my knowledge, can apply with the FAA to fly at a higher altitude, but I don't know the exact altitude that they could fly to.
So Ann, what are your thoughts on the because earlier in the beginning I sort of put up a map of where this all began, right, in New Jersey and the New York area with the counties, and I was calling out all the different military installations that are all packed in there, and I think you had some stuff to say about that, right?
Yeah, I'm really curious as to why it's going over the military bases. I tend to agree with Robert that maybe it's some sort of test to see how the U.S. is going to react if there is increased dronage over these military facilities. I have learned that like even 2 weeks ago, the drones were over U.S. bases in the UK. And as recently as 5 hours ago, over a U.S. base in Germany, some drones were seen. So something's going on here, and we need to focus on why it's happening. As far as I wanted to bring up one other thing, Robert talked about how the commercial drone companies can fly at different heights and they know different things. Did you know that those drone companies have monitoring systems and they will detect a drone as soon as it's turned on, along with the operator, and they can follow it both in real time. And they can tell what type of drone it is, any payload, and the operator's information of that drone. So I don't believe that the government doesn't know what's going on, because there is technology out there. I just think they aren't sharing it with us at this point in time.
I think that's probably more likely the case. So just to harp on a point a little bit, you were talking about there were other drone sightings in the UK and Germany. However, those were they were seen over U.S. military installations. So the common denominator here clearly is the U.S. military installations are being surveilled or something, right?
I think so. And it's curious, and you would think that they would put up their own technology to go check out these drones to see what it is. I mean, I know the military has its own technology to actually shoot lasers out towards drones to disable them if they want to. So I'm really curious as to why they're over these bases. What are they trying to focus on? Is it the military themselves doing some sort of exercise? Or is it a foreign country?
That's the $1 million question, right?
I think so.
I think the real concern that comes to mind for almost everybody concerning the incursions over the military bases is that we have a war going on in Ukraine where the Ukrainians have become very sophisticated in drone warfare. And, you can see that on the TV news at night, that they have become a very potent form of weaponry. And so I think what's even more concerning is that the government spokespeople that are coming on television right now, including Admiral John Kirby, who is the National Security Agency spokesperson, just throws up his hands and says, we just don't know what they are. And this is very puzzling coming from someone, especially with his background. But I mean, we should be defending our military bases with all means necessary. Nobody, whether it be a hobby drone operator or a commercial drone operator, unless he's given permission by the U.S. military, should be going over our military bases without fear of repercussion. I mean, this goes against all the conventional wisdom of national defense.
Yeah, that's something I had thought about as well, and we had conversations about sort of exactly that in previous episodes. We were talking about Langley and such, and we were talking with Stephen Bassett, and he was he very eloquently put it that if you go over a military installation, you will be annihilated. Why is this not happening? Big question mark.
Did you notice that John Kirby, the White House spokesperson that Robert just mentioned, in his presentation, he also said that they need to fill in the gap of legislation for drones, and that they are hoping that this incident will help Congress fill in the gap and make new legislation. Can you believe that? Do you think this is some sort of military exercise just to pressure Congress and get the point to them that, hey, this is an issue, look how people are freaking out. Perhaps you should do something like make some more legislation to control drones, and this won't happen again.
Wow, that's very interesting.
And I mean, in response to your inquiry about what Admiral Kirby said, for example. The FAA authorized drones to begin with. All drone flights are under the auspices of the Federal Aviation Administration. And like I mentioned in the beginning of our presentation, that you must have some type of operator certificate, whether it be hobby or commercial. And so it's almost like we're going back 5 to 6 years when drones first started coming out, where you could buy them off the shelf at Amazon or, at your local hobby store. It was a steep learning curve because, even people that had flown radio controlled airplanes and radio controlled helicopters were not accustomed to flying this type of platform. And so the platform is more sophisticated in certain ways because of the way it operates. And therefore, it brings on a whole new set of rules and regulations. But the FAA has had plenty of time to come up to speed on getting everyone familiar with drone operation. And so to think that we must now reapproach legislation in the Congress is, it seems like we're going backwards in a hurry here. And I think that's what's really puzzling to everybody, right?
Well, if there's a loophole of sorts, and do you have any additional information about what that loophole might be?
Well, there are rules for flying, as Robert mentioned. There's hobbyist and there's professional. I think they want to have more control over where these drones can fly, basically. And if it's over a certain size, it has to have different requirements attached to it as far as reporting where they're going to be and putting in flight plans. I think that's what it is. They just want to expand on that for security reasons. They want to tighten things down.
Okay, so maybe I'm just speculating here, but maybe this loophole that they're talking about is the fact that they cannot currently control these drones. Like if they wanted to geofence off an area, they can't currently do that. It sounds like.
Yeah, because they can go in public areas. They can fly along sidewalks. They can fly over parks. They can't fly over houses and hover over them because there's, a reasonable expectation of privacy. They can't do that because then local law enforcement can get involved. But if they're up and they're flying along at a certain area and they're in a permissible airspace where they're not required to file a flight program or a permit, whatever it's called, then they're allowed to operate there.
Yeah, I think that the loophole that Mike might be talking about, and I found this to be interesting when I was watching the news coverage when they were interviewing law enforcement officials there in the New Jersey and New York area. I was somewhat shocked by their lack of knowledge of, all of the rules and regulations surrounding drone operation, because ultimately the FAA is the one that has to enforce the regulations, and I don't think that they have kept the local law enforcement, whether it be city, state, federal, in the loop as to how to enforce the regulations, whether it be, watching where the drone operator lands finally and then going to his physical address and giving him a citation, or maybe using like the barriers that you're talking about that could, make it to where the violator must land his drone within a certain amount of time or face the consequences. So yeah, there may be a need for new rules and regulations, but there has to be an enforcement mechanism And really the people that are on the ground right now to do that is our local law enforcement. But I think that they should be required to go through some specific and fairly intense training given by the FAA so that they're more familiar with the rules and regulations.
All right, so I want to run this past both of you guys because I feel like you might maybe have some insight on it. And it was, I remember it distinctly because Stuart and I were interviewing with Robert Salas, and he was talking about the UFOs turning off the nuclear missiles in the 60s. And at that time, we had a Fleet Week here going on in Los Angeles. I live by the port, and I'm quite close to the water, to the point that there was like 1,000-foot aircraft carrier or something not too far away, and they were broadcasting a signal, and this was made public. They were broadcasting a signal to specifically prevent drones from getting too close to the aircraft carrier and the other ships. And multiple, like almost the whole neighborhood was complaining that their garage door openers weren't working quite correctly. And the place that I'm at, we ended up spending like $1,800 on a new motherboard because the thing fried out. So with the idea that a war vessel can project a signal that prevents drones from going to it, how is that not done at our military, our physical military installations on the ground?
Well, I have seen that technology used for tanks as well. They can put it out above their tank to repel it away from them, but they also have the laser technology as well to shoot them down or shoot an EMF at them or even shoot missiles at the larger drones. Yeah, that's pretty curious. That's what I'm saying. There's so much technology out there to get rid of these drones. How come the military's not getting involved or being allowed to be involved in order to figure out what the situation is? I do agree with Robert, what he said. I think some of them are larger drones that are commercial level drones. And then there's all these copycats out there with their little drones going up, because there were all these little drones in Temecula and Menifee and Murrieta yesterday and the day before, and they're all copycat drones. They aren't these huge drones. So yeah, it's curious. I wonder about that technology myself.
Yeah, I think like there in that New Jersey area it's a highly populated area. And so yes, there's probably the copycatters. And it's interesting to me that this is happening mostly in New Jersey, which is the location where H.G. Wells first broadcast War of the Worlds. Now, War of the Worlds was a radio broadcast, and it created, excuse me, it created mass hysteria on the eastern seaboard because people thought that we were actually being invaded by Martians. And there was a big lesson learned there, is that, you know, people will buy into something like that, especially back then, because we didn't have all the modern technology. Everybody just used to talk about, Mars is going to invade, Martians are coming, and it was in the comic strips and all that. But so I think a little bit, or maybe a lot, of what's going on the eastern seaboard right now is some form of mass hysteria. However, watching the footage, I've been watching it intensely for the past 2 weeks. There is so much activity, and that people naturally become concerned. It's where they live. It's, they drive to work and before the sun comes up or the sun's going down, and they see, not one, two, or three lights in the sky, but dozens and dozens of them. And then it becomes a spectacle and they want to know what's going on. It's just natural human behavior. But for no one to step forward and say, this is what's going on, is scary. I hope we know sooner than later. And I also heard a commentator, this was the former CIA desk chief in Moscow, or an assistant desk chief for the CIA in Moscow last night, saying that when our enemies see the hand wringing that's going on among our government officials, saying that we don't know what this is, then it just gives them an opening, and they can see our vulnerabilities.
Yes, I agree with you. Dr. Stephen Greer was in a interview, and he even said that that's causing chaos, these drones, that's their purpose. And he said it's a form of psychological warfare as well, to make people concerned and see how they react. So that's why there's some concern that it is a foreign adversary trying to put out feelers to see what would happen if they did this kind of thing. And if people get too used to seeing the drones around, when the real threat comes in, then nothing's going to be done against them because it's just not being paid attention to. It's kind of like what happened before 9/11. Some incidences happened and they ignored them, and then 9/11 happened. So I think that the military needs to be paying attention to this. Maybe they are, but they're just not sharing that with us.
I have a feeling that they are paying very close attention, and they're just probably not sharing with us. But then again, part of me does think that they being the military, may be part of this themselves. And maybe it's like I said, perhaps it's we need to do something to make more laws, and or all this UFO disclosure, UAP disclosure is coming out in full force. Let's distract the people and downplay it, and hey, they're just drones. I don't know. I mean, it's such a fluid situation right now, but I want to shift gears for a little bit, but before I do that, I think it's fair to say that the three of us who are actual UAP field investigators, and others on our team, and others I've heard of in the online world, we're pretty confident that what we're primarily seeing in the news is not ET. Would you agree with that? Or?
Yes, I think they're man-made.
Yeah, I would agree with that too, Mike. I've watched a lot of footage. People doing video and home movies, even back to the 70s and the 60s, of UFOs, and this does not take on that type of behavior. This seems to be very programmed, and with patterns and so forth. One thing I did want to say is that I have several theories about what it might be, but I don't think it would be done in such a conspicuous manner. But one thing that comes to mind is that the Secret Service took a lot of heat because of their lackadaisical approach there in Butler, Pennsylvania, during the Trump assassination attempt. They took a lot of heat in the congressional hearings. And then after that, there was the Iranian threat of assassination against President-elect Trump. And he does own that golf course there in Bedminster, New Jersey. It could be the Secret Service getting warmed up for the inauguration, and that they perceive that the Iranian threat is more prominent than they're letting us know about. It could be the Drug Enforcement Agency. We know that the cartels are running rampant in our major metropolitan areas. They may be trying to get a handle on that from a law enforcement perspective. It could be Homeland Security, again, working with the Secret Service on, protecting our elected officials. President-elect Trump was not the only target of that Iranian assassination plot. They were also looking at the Iranians were plotting against other officials that had been in some of the earlier decision-making during the Trump administration. So, those are just some theories I have, is that when the government comes out and says that they don't know what something is, it usually means the exact opposite. And they're trying to keep their cover, but they're concerned that something big may happen around the inauguration. So.
Yeah, you make a good point. I hadn't thought of that. It could be practice for the inauguration for security. But then why are drones being seen over military bases? And why are drones being seen over US bases in UK and Germany? I think it's something a little more complex than that, or maybe it could be a combination of two different things.
Well, just to sort of play the other side to that, and I think those are great possibilities that could very well be true. But then again, like at the same time, how long is that going to go on for? Because I do believe, like, and it was just today that I heard about it, at least, that people in New Jersey were threatening to blow these things out of the sky with their own, legally obtained weapons, which of course is illegal. Don't do that. But the fact that the people are starting to be like, yeah, okay, government, if you're not going to do it, we'll do it for you. That's just tip the iceberg. Like, this thing will potentially escalate a little bit if this continues, and the powers that be don't actually, if they keep saying we don't know what it is, the people are not, the people of America, they're not going to just sit back and wait. So the whole point of that little sidebar was, if they were to be, testing out various things or looking for cartels or getting ready for the inauguration, I feel like they went a little overboard with it, and they need to immediately stop, because it's starting to potentially freak people out, maybe too much, I think.
Yeah. I think it's their goal of chaos.
So to shift gears a little bit, though, because there's something really interesting happening simultaneously where we're seeing these clearly man-made craft that have, or like quadcopters, and they make noise and they just do mechanical things. We're also hearing lesser of reports from pilots, military pilots and civilian pilots, who are seeing, and one in particular was like a red ball of light doing a corkscrew maneuver in the sky at a very fast speed, zipping out and backwards. In the news article or the video or whatever that I was watching, someone had the audacity to take, I don't remember the guy's name, but somebody from 2022 and say, oh yeah, those are just satellite reflections of Starlink. And it's like, no, that was maybe 2 years ago, maybe that was a true thing when he was talking about it, but whoever put that video together stitched it together in a way. But satellites don't corkscrew. They're not red. They don't move forward and backward kind of thing. So what do you guys think about that? And why are we not hearing more about that? We're hearing more about these man-made things than the stuff that really does wild, that we investigate, essentially.
I was thinking the same thing after we talked about these drones. I was thinking, what about the situation in Oregon? That was fascinating. I listened to the air control tapes, and it's more than one airline, more than one pilot, all reporting on these different glowing orbs. The one specifically with the medevac was a red orb that would come within 20 miles of it and then zoom out to the ocean and then come back within 20 miles of it and then zoom out to the ocean. They even tried to get the Coast Guard involved in that to see what they could see with their helicopter. But we didn't get to hear what they found. And then, like you said, they corkscrewed coming down from 50,000 feet. Can you believe that? Because this airline, one of the airlines that saw one of these orbs, was flying at 30,000 feet. And they thought that they saw 4 of them. One was below them, around 1,000 feet. One was at their level. I don't know where the third one was, but the fourth one was at 50,000 feet. And that was in the recording as well. I thought that was fascinating, that they all talked about it, different airlines, and the air controller was very fascinated as well. He's like, take some video. Send me the video. I want to see what it looks like.
Yeah, I think that was a fascinating event out there several days ago over Oregon. And I watched the same footage and the same air traffic control conversations with the pilots. Um, one of the pilots said that it's not satellites, and he was very adamant about that. And when he said that, it makes me want to impress upon people that those people up there are experts at what they're doing. They are
Yes.
licensed commercial pilots. They see all kinds of things in the sky. They're trained to recognize other aircraft in the sky, whether it be going alongside of them or coming the opposite direction. Um, they see all types of things, but their number of hours that they spend in the air is adds up to experience that cannot be questioned and judgment. I mean, they are responsible for the safety of hundreds of thousands of passengers every single day, and they're not just up there clowning around and let's see if we can get ATC fired up because we might see a UFO. No, these people are professional pilots. Many of them are former military pilots. Um, they are alarmed by what they're seeing and they want it investigated. And finally, now, through some of the good work of our naval pilots and so forth, people that are concerned about flight safety, now airline pilots are being able to speak out without fear of repercussion or losing their jobs. And that is a great milestone in our endeavor to try to figure out what's going on out there in the skies.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So I kind of feel like that's the real story here is the pilots right now today, a couple days ago, seeing these things that are doing remarkable maneuvers, and not to downplay the drones, right? But that that's what's in everybody's faces. But why are we not hearing more about these more interesting things? Like that would kind of, in a way, it would freak me out if I was on that airplane as a passenger, because I was like, okay, great, we made it, right? But what if we didn't? I don't know.
Yeah,
Well,
I agree with you. I think that these orbs that so many people are seeing and so many pilots are reporting, thanks to the congressional hearings, they are speaking out more. And like Robert said, they are trained. They are credible witnesses. I don't think they're going to make things up. They are there to report it to the air controllers because the air controllers are concerned that it's going to be hurting them, that it's going to be in their flight path. And if you listen to the recordings of these Oregon airplanes, the air controllers kept asking, is it at your level? Is it at your level? And is it below you? Is it above you? Is it at your level? I think that's the main concern right now is what is the threat to our airplanes right now, these orbs?
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I mean, I just wanted to put out a little sort of a brief episode here for our core listener base, as it were, because I'm sure that they're probably wondering what we're all thinking here. So I definitely appreciate you guys' time. And do you have any more like sort of final thoughts or closing thoughts about all this?
No, I'm just with you. I'm monitoring all the orbs that are going on along the coast, as well as the drones. And I'm really curious as to why these drone incidences are happening. And it would be nice if the government or local agencies would share some information to help stifle the chaos that it's causing amongst people.
Be more transparent, right?
Yeah, it'd be great if they were.
That's the essence of the entire disclosure movement. Robert, Any final thoughts?
Yeah. Well, there seems to be more activity going on there in the New Jersey area than what a person might normally see on any given night. I think that that's something that needs to be investigated fully, and hopefully some answers will be coming forward. I will say, though, that the public probably needs to be acclimated to the fact that there will be an increase in drone activity going forward. Amazon is getting ready to deliver packages with drones. We're now seeing drone taxis going up for the first time. And so it's kind of like getting back to the Jetsons. If you remember the opening of the Jetsons, there were little flying saucers flying all over the city. And so this is something that will probably increase, but the public wants information and they're entitled to more information so that they're not in fear of something going on that could harm them, or but I think maybe the government is a little behind two steps on that process, and it's just going to take more coordination among everybody, and probably further legislation, like Ann mentioned, that puts a little tighter control on where drones can fly and at what time, what altitude, and what activities they can perform and so on.
Awesome. Well, thank you again both for the extremely last minute notice and me reaching out and you being available. I definitely appreciate that. And Reverend Stu, when you see this, I missed you, but this was a nice little episode that we have that we put out there for everybody. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Doing a debrief by myself here seems pretty darn strange, so not going to do that. But Reverend Stu, I do miss you, and I look forward to having you in our very next episode and working out our next season. So thank you all very much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for your likes, comments, subscribes, and shares. Please do keep them coming, and we will see you back here in about a week or so when we do our year-end review, myself and Reverend Stu. Until then, stay safe.